Take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Zoey, an American woman who follows her husband to Brazil and discovers unexpected joy in a new culture she comes to call home. Zoey Morgan woke to golden sunlight streaming through the curtains, painting warm patterns across the bedroom floor of their Boston apartment. The familiar scent of Gabriel's coffee drifted from the kitchen, rich and comforting like the man himself. She stretched contentedly, savoring the quiet morning moment, listening to the gentle hum of city life beginning outside their window. Gabriel stood at the kitchen counter, his dark hair still slightly damp from his shower, stirring honey into his coffee with practiced movements. His grandmother's recipe, he always said with that smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. Zoey loved how he carried these small pieces of his heritage with him, little threads connecting him to the Brazil he'd left behind as a child. Their life together had fallen into a comfortable rhythm over the 3 years of their marriage morning kisses over breakfast, evening walks through the park near their apartment, weekends spent exploring small towns along the coast. The gentle predictability of their days brought Zoey a sense of security that she treasured, a feeling of roots growing deeper with each passing season. Gabriel worked as an architectural engineer for a sustainable building firm, his designs blending beauty with functionality in a way that had earned him recognition within the industry. Zoey admired how he could transform empty spaces into vibrant environments, much like he had transformed her once solitary life into something rich with connection and meaning. The apartment they shared reflected both of their personalities, Gabriel's Brazilian artifacts and family photographs, mingled with Zoey's collection of vintage books and the watercolor paintings she created in her spare time. Sunlight bounced off the colorful throw pillows Gabriel's mother had sent from São Paulo, creating a warm, inviting space that felt perfectly like home. That evening, Gabriel returned home later than usual, his expression a mixture of excitement and uncertainty as he hung his coat by the door. "Zoey, we need to talk about something," he said, reaching for her hand and leading her to their small balcony where the sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The evening air wrapped around them like a gentle blanket, carrying the scent of the potted herbs they grew there. Sitting beside her, Gabriel explained that his company wanted him to lead a new sustainable development project in Rio de Janeiro, a position that would allow him to make a significant impact in his home country. His voice softened with emotion as he described the opportunity developing eco-friendly housing that would serve communities while preserving the natural beauty of Brazil, a dream he had harbored since his university days. "They want me there for at least 2 years," he said, his dark eyes studying her face carefully, fingers intertwined with hers. "It would mean leaving everything here, starting fresh in a place that's familiar to me, but completely new to you." The evening breeze rustled through Zoe's hair as she absorbed his words, the weight of the decision settling between them. Zoe felt her heart flutter with a mixture of fear and excitement as she gazed at her husband, seeing the hope shimmering in his eyes like stars appearing in the darkening sky. She had never imagined living outside the United States, had never learned another language, had built her entire freelance graphic design career within the comfortable boundaries of Boston's creative community. Gabriel spoke of Brazil with such longing and loved the vibrant colors of the markets, the rhythm of music that seemed to pulse through the streets, the warmth of family gatherings that stretched long into the evening. His descriptions painted pictures in Zoe's mind, images so vivid she could almost taste the tropical fruits he remembered from childhood and feel the ocean breeze he described with such fondness. "I know it's a lot to ask," Gabriel whispered, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch as familiar and comforting as the sound of his voice. "But we could build something beautiful there together, Amor." The Portuguese endearment rolled off his tongue naturally, a small reminder of the culture that had shaped the man she loved. The decision wasn't made that night, but over the following weeks as summer faded into autumn, they researched and planned and dreamed together. They spent evenings looking at apartments in Rio, Gabriel pointing out neighborhoods near the beach where they could watch spectacular sunsets, places where the morning light would be perfect for Zoe's painting. The possibility began to feel less frightening and more like an adventure waiting to unfold. "I'll go," Zoe finally said one quiet Sunday morning, certainty settling in her chest like a warm stone. Gabriel's face lit up with joy as she continued, "I can work remotely, and maybe this is exactly the kind of change we need." The morning light seemed brighter somehow, illuminating their kitchen with golden possibility, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the promise of new beginnings. 3 months later, Zoe stood on the balcony of their new apartment in Ipanema, the humid air clinging to her skin like a warm embrace. Below, the city pulsed with life vendors calling out in rapid Portuguese, music drifting from nearby cafes, the distant sound of waves breaking against the shore. The sensory overload was both overwhelming and exhilarating, so different from the familiar rhythms of Boston. Inside, boxes remained half unpacked, their contents spilling out like memories from their previous life. Gabriel moved through the space with easy familiarity, already at home in this country that lived in his blood. Zoe watched him speak to the delivery men in fluid Portuguese, the language flowing like music, beautiful but incomprehensible to her ears that struggled to distinguish even simple words from the melodic stream. That first week passed in a blur of jet lag and adjustment, Zoe's mind foggy with exhaustion as she struggled to navigate the simplest tasks. Grocery shopping became an intimidating expedition into the unknown. Labels unreadable, quantities confusing, the money still feeling like playthings in her hands rather than real currency. The cashier's friendly smiles would turn to polite confusion when she attempted to communicate. Sleep came easily each night, her body heavy with the day's challenges, but brought vivid dreams of home, her parents' garden in Massachusetts, the familiar corner cafe where the barista knew her order by heart, the comfortable routine that had structured her days. She would wake to the unfamiliar ceiling, Gabriel's warm presence beside her, the only constant in this new world they had entered together. Patience, Gabriel reminded her, his hand gentle on her shoulder as she fought tears of frustration after another failed attempt to order lunch at a local restaurant. Learning to live in a new country takes time, Amor. That evening, he sat with her in their balcony, teaching her simple Portuguese phrases as the sunset painted the sky in breathtaking colors, the warm breeze carrying the salt scent of the nearby ocean. Slowly, tentatively, Zoey began to establish small routines, morning coffee at the cafe downstairs where the owner, Dona Teresa, greeted her with increasing warmth. Afternoons spent working on her laptop by the window where the light was perfect for seeing her designs. The unfamiliar gradually became familiar, the strange sounds of the city forming a background rhythm that no longer startled her from sleep at night. One month into their new life, Gabriel's cousin Carolina invited them to a family gathering, a Sunday lunch that stretched into the evening. The apartment was crowded with relatives, conversations flowing around Zoey like a river she couldn't navigate, leaving her feeling like an island, separate and observed. She sat quietly, smiling politely, fatigue settling into her bones as she struggled to understand even fragments of the animated discussions. But then Gabriel's grandmother, Vovo Lucia, a tiny woman with eyes that sparkled with wisdom, sat beside her and pressed a plate of homemade brigadeiros into her hands. "Eat, eat," she said in accented English, one of the few in the family who spoke Zoe's language. "Sweet things make the heart happy." The chocolate melted on Zoe's tongue, rich and comforting, as the older woman patted her hand with understanding. That small moment of connection bloomed into something more when Vovo Lucia offered to teach Zoey to cook Brazilian dishes. "Food is a language everyone understands," she declared, and twice a week, Zoey would take the bus to the older woman's apartment, where they communicated through gestures, smiles, and the handful of Portuguese words Zoey was slowly accumulating. The kitchen became a classroom where mistakes were met with laughter rather than frustration. Under Vovo Lucia's patient guidance, Zoey learned to prepare feijoada, the rich bean stew that filled the kitchen with savory aromas, and pio de queijo, cheese bread that puffed up golden and perfect in the oven. With each successful dish, her confidence grew, extending beyond the kitchen into other aspects of her new life. The smells and tastes became familiar comforts rather than foreign challenges. Gabriel noticed the change in her, the way she began to hold herself with more certainty, the increasing frequency of her smile. "You're beginning to bloom here," he told her one evening as they walked along the beach at sunset, the sky painted in spectacular shades of orange and pink. The sand was still warm beneath their feet, and the gentle rhythm of the waves provided a soothing soundtrack to their conversation. When her parents called, concerned about her adjustment, Zoey surprised herself by enthusiastically describing the vibrant weekend markets, the breathtaking view from their balcony, the kindness of neighbors who now greeted her by name. "It's challenging," she admitted, "but also beautiful in ways I never expected." As she spoke, she realized the truth in her words. The difficulties remained, but alongside them had grown a genuine appreciation for this place. One afternoon, caught in an unexpected rainstorm while returning from the market, Zoey took shelter in a small art gallery. The owner, Isabella, spoke excellent English and guided her through the exhibition of local artists. "These paintings capture the soul of Brazil," Isabella explained, gesturing to vibrant canvases that seemed to pulse with life and color. The images resonated deeply with Zoey, speaking a visual language she understood perfectly. 6 months into their Brazilian life, Zoey sat on their balcony in the gentle evening light, sketchbook open on her lap, watercolors capturing the view of the beach at sunset. Her paintings had evolved since their arrival, incorporating the vibrant colors and rhythmic patterns that surrounded her in this new home. Isabella had offered to include some of Zoey's work in an upcoming exhibition featuring expatriate artists, a prospect that filled her with quiet pride. The Portuguese language no longer sounded like an impenetrable wall of sound, but had begun to separate into recognizable words and phrases. Zoey could now order her own Café Calm Light at their local coffee shop, exchange pleasantries with neighbors, and understand the basics of conversations around her. Each small victory in communication brought a sense of accomplishment that brightened her days like the tropical sunshine streaming through their windows. That morning, walking along the beach alone for the first time without fear of getting lost, Zoey had felt a profound sense of belonging wash over her like the gentle waves lapping at the shore. The familiar faces of regular beachgoers who now nodded in recognition, the vendor who remembered she preferred coconut water with a squeeze of lime, the rhythm of life that had once seemed so foreign but now felt like a dance she was learning to join. Gabriel found her on the balcony, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder as he admired her painting. "You've captured the exact color of the sunset," he murmured appreciatively, his voice blending with the evening sounds of the city below, children playing in the street, music from a distant restaurant, the soft rustling of palm leaves in the breeze. These sounds, once strange and jarring, now formed a comforting soundtrack to their evenings. Later that night, as they shared dinner with Carolina and her husband on their balcony, Zoey realized she had followed the Portuguese conversation for nearly 10 minutes without losing track. When she responded with a carefully constructed sentence, the delighted expressions on their faces warmed her heart like sunshine. "Soon you'll be more Brazilian than me," Gabriel teased, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the candles that illuminated their meal. Weekend trips to explore their new country became adventures rather than ordeals. A visit to the breathtaking Iguazu Falls, where the thundering water created rainbows in the mist. Hiking in the lush Atlantic forest where birds called to each other in the canopy above. Quiet days in colonial towns where history whispered from colorful buildings and cobblestone streets. Each experience added another layer to Zoey's growing love for this vibrant land. For Gabriel's birthday, Zoey organized a surprise gathering of friends and family, coordinating entirely in her improving Portuguese. Watching her husband surrounded by loved ones, laughing and at ease in his native culture, she felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. The apartment filled with the aromas of the Brazilian dishes she had prepared, Gabriel's favorites, taught with love by Vovó Lucia, who beamed with grandmotherly pride. "I never thought you would adjust so well," Gabriel confessed later that night as they swayed together on their balcony to the distant sounds of bossa nova drifting from a neighboring apartment. The night air was perfumed with jasmine from the potted plants Zoey had added to their outdoor space, creating a small oasis above the bustling city street. "You've embraced everything about this place with such openness." Zoey smiled, thinking of the long journey from those first overwhelming days to this moment of contentment. "It wasn't always easy," she admitted, remembering the tears of frustration, the homesickness that still occasionally washed over her like an unexpected wave. "But it helped having you as my bridge between worlds, and then building my own connections day by day." The exhibition of Zoey's artwork, Between Two Worlds, opened on a warm spring evening, the gallery space filled with people admiring her watercolors that blended American precision with Brazilian vibrancy. Local artists welcomed her into their community, praising the unique perspective she brought to familiar landscapes. As she discussed her work in a mixture of English and Portuguese, Zoey felt a new confidence in her identity as someone who belonged to both cultures. 1 year after their arrival, Zoey and Gabriel hosted a dinner party in their now fully settled apartment, filled with treasures collected during their Brazilian adventures, handcrafted pottery from Minas Gerais, woven textiles from the Northeast, Zoey's paintings of their favorite places. Friends from both their professional circles and Gabriel's extended family mingled comfortably, the conversation flowing easily between languages, laughter bridging any communication gaps that remained. As Zoey looked around at the gathering, at Gabriel pouring caipirinhas with practiced ease, at Vovó Lucia teaching one of Zoey's American clients the proper way to eat pio de queijo, she felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. This place that had once seemed so foreign had become home, not replacing what she had known before, but expanding her world in ways she could never have imagined from the safety of their Boston apartment. Later that night, standing on their balcony under a sky scattered with stars, Gabriel wrapped his arms around Zoey and whispered, "Are you happy here, Amor?" The night air was soft against their skin, carrying the mingled scents of the ocean and the city's salt and spice, flowers and food, all the elements that had become the familiar fragrance of their life together. In the distance, the lights of Rio sparkled like earthbound stars, beautiful and no longer intimidating. "I am," Zoey answered truthfully, leaning back against the solid warmth of her husband. "It feels like I've discovered a new part of myself here, like I've expanded rather than just relocated." A sense of gratitude washed over her, deep and peaceful as the ocean they could hear in the distance. What had begun as Gabriel's journey home had become her journey of discovery, each challenge overcome adding another thread to the rich tapestry of their shared life in this vibrant, beautiful country that had opened its arms to welcome her.